While most media is being relentlessly negative and sensationalist with its reporting of the virus crisis, there are some notable exceptions. I'm finding that Channel 7 Nightly News, while bringing us the reality of the coronavirus situation, is also highlighting the positives. And SBS television news is also providing balanced coverage, as opposed to the ABC, which is probably the most tabloid media outlet in the country right now with the tone and content of its virus coverage. Now, my purpose with these broadcasts is to bring you some of the positive stories that are out there, but which you are unlikely to hear about or read about in mainstream media. The following items have all come from announcements in the past 2 or 3 days. Now, Westpac senior economist Matt Hassan says that while the property sector will probably endure some kind of downturn, it is unlikely to be the catastrophic drop that some are forecasting. Hassan says that some think the banning of auctions will be a calamity for real estate markets, but he points out that only a small proportion of sales occur by auction, as I have also done. Only about 10% of total sales across the nation are by auction. Hassan says the effect on prices from the virus is likely to come quite slowly. He says, I think it is plausible that we'll just see people switching to online and private sales, and we'll see properties continuing to tick over. And this tends to support the view recently published from La Trobe Financial, which says the virus crisis will undoubtedly have an impact on the property market, but it expects a strong and sharp rebound for the housing market and also the employment conditions in the greater economy over the coming months as the country overcomes the health crisis. The Chief Investment Officer of La Trobe Financial, Chris Andrews, says that the housing market will ultimately experience a sharp rebound once the lockdown measures are relaxed. He says that the history has also proven the immense resilience of the Australian housing market, particularly following the global financial crisis in 2008 and the downturn in the major city markets from 2017 to the early part of 2019. An interesting item has come through which points out that large tracts of Australia remain absolutely free of coronavirus. Around 135 regions and local government areas have recorded no COVID-19 cases in New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia and South Australia. The vast majority of those COVID-free zones are regional towns, and it's one reason, amongst others, that I expect regional real estate markets to be less impacted than the big city markets. Another reason why I'm suggesting investors should consider regional markets, which offer also affordability and much better rental yields. Now, some good news for vendors in Melbourne. The Victorian state government has reversed its property inspection ban following an industry backlash. Now, on Thursday last week, there was an update from Consumer Affairs Victoria on their website, which revealed that private inspections of occupied properties would be banned, which agents said would allow relatively few properties to be able to trade easily. And the announcement caused widespread outrage from sellers and their agents. And then the Consumer Affairs Victoria website updated yesterday morning to read, private inspections of an occupied or tenanted residential building are permitted to be organised. One of those areas where there is considerable confusion, which is not helping in these difficult times. The New South Wales government has announced it will be providing $440 million in rent relief for landlords and tenants across both the residential property sector and the commercial property sector. That $440 million in rent relief will be in the form of land tax waivers and rebates. And the expectation is that this will be roughly evenly split between business and residential landlords. Now, despite the restrictions that are making real estate transactions more difficult, there are some big deals being announced. One involved an apartment which sold in Sydney for a record price of $21 million for an apartment. That's amazing. The deal was negotiated some time ago, but apparently settled in the past few days. And there have also been reports in recent days that the former Australian cricketer, fast bowler Brett Lee, has paid $9 million to buy a new home in the Sydney suburb of Clontarf. Canberra's experienced the second largest increase in property listings in the nation in March, and prices for houses continue to rise despite the economic impacts of the pandemic. SQM Research's monthly report said the number of properties listed for sale in Canberra rose 11% in March, second only to Darwin. Last week saw the release of rental figures for the major cities. These covered movements in city rents during March and were mainly very positive. And as usual, mainstream media didn't report what the figures actually said. They indulged their own speculation that rents will be falling soon, thereby doing what they do best, which is turning a positive into a negative. So what did the actual figures say? And they said that house rents rose in the March quarter in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth and Hobart, and they remained unchanged in Brisbane and Canberra. The only city where they fell was, not surprisingly, Darwin, where the market continues to struggle even before the virus crisis. Now, a nationwide collapse in consumer spending caused by the virus outbreak was arrested last week as new real-time economic data shows that pensioners and social security recipients used the one-off $750 stimulus payment to buy more than usual. Spending had dropped in late March to be 13% below normal, but recovered to be just 5% below the norm last week, according to a database that tracks the consumption patterns of hundreds of thousands of Australians. And what this shows is that stimulus measures from government do have a positive impact. And there's a lot more to come, for example, when businesses start getting their wage subsidies, which hopefully will be soon. It's not just the federal government, there's plenty of stimulus measures coming from state governments and from city councils. New South Wales Health is calling for expressions of interest for frontline health workers and support staff through a dedicated online portals as part of its COVID-19 response. Richard Griffiths from Workforce Planning and Talent Development says the new website will enable companies and individuals to register their skills for potential positions ahead of expected demand across the healthcare system. He says this portal has been designed as a landing page for people to make themselves known to the health system. Now, various city councils have been announcing a range of support measures. The City of Melbourne has announced support measures for businesses, including grants to develop online and e-services, halving rents for council-owned buildings, suspending fees for some council services, and a whole lot more. And the City of Sydney has announced a similar range of measures, including grants for businesses, artists, not-for-profit organisations, and community groups. Now, on a much larger scale, the $11 billion metro tunnel is underway in Melbourne. Now, the pandemic is causing delays and a reduction in productivity, but the main thing is that this massive project is happening. Reports say that other major transport projects, such as the $6.7 billion Westgate Tunnel, are also not immune to the coronavirus delays that are plaguing the construction industry due to the new safety measures and a slowdown in construction material imports. But these big ticket infrastructure projects are creating economic activity and jobs when it's most needed. And the Sydney Business Chamber says the announcement of the start of the tendering process to build 50 kilometres of twin tunnels joining the Sydney CBD to Parramatta couldn't have come soon enough, as the economy needs projects to be fast-tracked to begin the city's recovery phase. It says the Metro West project announcement is a valuable confidence booster and cause for optimism amongst many sectors, including construction, at a time when the people of Sydney need positive leadership from all tiers of government. And this is important because it's a $20 billion project. Telstra has announced the creation of thousands of new jobs while also rolling out new relief measures for cash-strapped customers. Telstra has revealed that it's increased its workforce by another 2,500 staff on top of the 1,000 new staff recruited in recent weeks to help bolster support for its customers struggling during the pandemic. The new jobs will be in Australian call centres and back-of-house positions. Telstra says we already have 4,000 people in our call centres in Australia, but we're really needing to beef up that capacity. Now, on another note, employment in Australia's renewable energy sector surged nearly 30% to its highest ever level, following a boom in wind and solar power construction activity last year. And the figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics show that full-time jobs in renewable energy rose by 5,700 to reach almost 27,000, as every state and territory recorded significant increases in jobs in that sector. And that's a significant story because there are dozens of new alternative energy projects happening across Australia. And this can play an important part not only in helping the environment, but in generating economic activity and jobs when it's most needed. Now, on that note, Australia's first and rather large offshore wind farm project is a step closer after developers began the process of seeking environmental approvals from the federal government. Now, this is a wind farm that will generate 2,000 megawatts. It will be Australia's largest, and it will be the first offshore wind farm to be constructed in Australian waters, and it will have an estimated cost of $10 billion once completed, and will create as many as 2,000 jobs during the construction phase. Now, elsewhere in Victoria, the Elaine wind farm, which is the second part of a 230 megawatt facility at the Lal wind complex in Victoria, has begun generating to the grid. The wind farm is located southeast of Ballarat on two sections of farmland in the Moorabool Shire. Now, there have been numerous other announcements of major developments across Australia. In Perth, a new $200 million development, including a Medi hotel, will be built in Perth to offer out-of-hospital treatment options and to free up beds. Up to 60 beds will be available, with the Medi hotel expected to divert up to 5,000 patients from public hospital emergency departments each year. Elsewhere, in New South Wales, the development process for a $350 million north side private hospital and medical precinct is planned for West Gosford, that's on the Central Coast. And that has progressed to the next stage, with the New South Wales Planning Department requesting a response to public submissions on the project from the applicant, which is AA Crown Holdings. The proposed development is being considered for approval as a state significant development. In Melbourne, a horseshoe-shaped apartment complex will be built on top of the Flemington Racecourse, immediately after receiving the support of Melbourne councillors. The $300 million 15-storey building will have 292 apartments, including 26 penthouses and 11 townhouses, parking and also bicycle parking. And one of the most hotly debated high-rise towers in South Perth has had a hard-fought win in court, which paves the way for the start of construction on a 28-storey building there. Managing Director Gavin Hawkins said that the project will go ahead with almost the same design as the initial proposal, which originally lost its development approval 4 years ago. Wollongong City Council has adopted a plan to allow another 736 homes and a sports field to be built in the fast-growing West Adapto development area. The neighbourhood plan, which was unanimously supported by councillors, will allow a 75-hectare parcel of land to become a new West Adapto neighbourhood that's west of Horsley near Wollongong. And a company called GemLife has lodged plans with the Toowoomba City, a regional council rather, for a new 230 lot over 50s lifestyle resort in Highfields, that's in Toowoomba, west of Brisbane. Subject to approvals, the proposed community will have the latest technology and extensive offering of indoor and outdoor recreational facilities for active over 50s. Now let's have a look at the resources sector, which is one of the most important industries in this economic downturn, and one that I expect to boom as Australia and the world emerges on the other side of the crisis. Now, the Queensland's resources sector has contributed 80% of the state's $83 billion in exports in the 12 months to February this year, according to figures from the Bureau of Statistics. $66 billion worth of exports from the state's resources sector is considered likely to act as a buffer in the coming months as the economy is set to be impacted by the coronavirus. Now, turning to some individual projects in Queensland, a $1.5 billion transmission line project called Copper String in North Queensland is progressing. The proponents have announced a request for proposal process to secure a principal contractor. It's another important milestone in developing infrastructure for the Northwest Minerals Province and follows the calling of expressions of interest earlier this year. And from this, proponents see Shoestring Proprietary Limited are expected to derive a short list of infrastructure providers. The Townsville-based company is seeking to develop a 1,100 kilometre high voltage power line to connect the Northwest Minerals Province to the state's electricity grid near Townsville, and it's claimed that it will create 750 construction jobs. Over in Western Australia, Capricorn Metals has been busy establishing the necessary infrastructure for its new Karlawinda gold project near Newman. It's almost finished building a 306-room accommodation village and said it'll be ready for occupation by the end of this month. And a 44-kilometre access road is also well underway, allow entry to the mine via the Great Northern Highway. Now, there's news that 1/3 of all Australian businesses have applied for the JobKeeper assistance, with small and medium-sized firms accounting for 9 in 10 of those applications, according to Treasury data. The figures reveal the breadth of the damage to national industry by the pandemic and the social isolation measures, but it also shows how extensive that federal government package is, and it will pump $130 billion into subsidising wages and hopefully preserving as many jobs as possible. There have been 788,000 applications for the JobKeeper program. There are out of a total of $2.4 million businesses, according to the Bureau of Statistics. And according to those figures, 2/3 of them haven't applied for assistance, which is encouraging. Perhaps the most uplifting news in recent days is that we have seen the start of discussion about how and when the restrictions will be lifted. While the medical experts and the national political leaders are warning of the dangers of relaxing the social restrictions too much too soon, I'm encouraged by the fact that the measures appear to be doing the job of containing the spread of the virus, to the extent that we're now talking about the possibility of relaxing them sometime soon. And when it happens, I think Australia will party like it never has since the end of World War II, and that may precipitate some kind of economic boom. Well, that's it for now. I plan to keep bringing you some of the positive news amid all the media negativity. So we'll be talking again soon. Bye for now.